Having said that, I actually went used on my first bike, and I did as I said. I had a friend who recommended a bike from a friend of his. He said she hadn't ridden it too hard, she hadn't ridden it too long, and she wasn't too aggressive of a rider. So we were felt pretty safe that the bike was going to be in good shape when I bought it. And this is the one. So it's a Specialized rock hopper. Specialized is probably one of the most well-known brands in mountain biking and biking in general. Rock hopper is a sort of mid-level. This is an older bike, 2010. It's pretty much the way it came. I've had to change a few things out due to wear and tear, but nothing too exciting. It's pretty much the way it comes. Having said that, I did put a couple of new grips on here because my old grips wore out. And these are really nice ODIs that have lock-ons, which means they won't twist or move around at all when you're mountain biking. And you can see I just put a brand new front tire on there because my tires were wearing thin, and it was time to put a new tire on. You may also notice that's a different rim than the back because I had a bad landing on the front rim and had to replace it. So that's what's going on there. This was a great bike. I really love this bike even to this day. In fact, I was just on it yesterday. And it's still, even though it's, you know, sort of, it's not top of the line, I definitely still get a lot of use and pleasure out of this. It's definitely a bike that I feel I still have a lot of learning and skill sets to develop by riding on it, so I'm happy to keep using it, and it's still in good shape. So for me, this was a good buy. I got it for a good price. The main component of the suspension here is the front shock, and that's a shock that is a spring shock, so that's basically never gonna, or it's very durable. So you don't have to worry about that getting broken too easily. But as I say, it's now what's considered a cross-country bike. It's made for lightweight and relatively short amount of suspension. You can see the forks will compress, and that's called the suspension. And this is what's known as a 100mm suspension fork. This one's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit longer of a suspension fork there, and it's for a little bit longer travel, so when you hit a bump in the road or a jump or a drop, your bike can land on it and compress even further and absorb a bigger drop. So, so this is my first bike, but after a couple of years of riding it, I felt ready to try upgrading to this next level of bike. This is called a full suspension because, as you see, it's got the same front fork, but a longer version, and it's also got a rear shock. So that rear shock does the same thing as the front. It'll compress and allow the bike to absorb impacts as the back wheel travels over obstacles like rocks and roots and things in the trail. So again, this bike is made for going over bigger drops and bigger bumps and bigger lumps than this is, but even though there's, you know, a twice as much price tag on this bike as this bike, if they were both new, or more, there's still almost any trail I could ride on this bike, I could ride on either bike. So my point here is, one of the big secrets in mountain biking, when you're buying a mountain bike, don't get caught up in which type of bike you have to buy, because almost any bike can be used on almost any trail. And especially as a beginner, you're not going to have to worry about taking, you know, a short travel cross-country bike over a 4-foot drop really fast, because I don't think as a beginner you should be going over 4-foot drops really fast on any kind of bike. So the other really key feature to the hardtail, this sort of cheaper version, is if you get this type of a hardtail, you'll see there's no suspension. It's just a solid metal frame there. That is, to be honest, more difficult to ride because this back end will bounce around and move and bounce over every bump. and that'll make it more difficult to stay on your pedals when you're going over that. So by comparison, when you're going over that same trail with this rear suspension setup, this back wheel is going to absorb a lot of that bouncing up and down and allow you to stay much more firm on your pedals. Well, of course, if you're more firm on your pedals, it's going to feel safer, solid. You're probably going to go a little faster because you're more solid and more safe. Your tire will stay contact with the ground because the suspension will allow it to keep close to the ground and touching the ground. Whereas this one is more difficult. You're going to have to balance better on your pedals. But what this one will end up doing is teaching you how to ride a mountain bike. And what this one will do is how to cheat and basically float over. No, I'm a little bit kidding about the cheating part, but learning to ride on a hardtail will give you skills that will transfer to every other mountain bike that you ride. And this can be said of any upgrade, whether you're talking about fatter tires, or maybe you're getting some big fat pedals, or maybe you're getting a better fork with longer travel and you can go over bigger bumps. Well, all of these things serve to make your ride easier. But if you think about it, 20 years ago, this bike was 10 times better than the very best bikes that the top racers rode. And those racers did not complain about what they were riding on. It was simply the best they had, but now technology and time has caught up and left it in the dust. So what we end up with today is, for a cheap price, a very high quality bike that, you know, is much better in many ways than some of the top of the line bikes of years gone by. So there's no excuse to say, oh, well, I can't, you know, mountain bike until I can buy a bike that's so good that, you know. No, you can mountain bike on any kind of bike. As long as it's safe, you can do it. And I'll tell you another hint. When you're going down, when I go down on a trail on this bike, even though I may not be going as fast, it feels like I'm going as fast because the excitement level of having to hold on and having to use all my skills just to maintain the trail, well, that's exciting. That's something I love, and that's something why I'll always keep riding this kind of bike. Even though I have the more technically advanced and superior bike, this bike is great too. The fact that it absorbs the vibrations and the shocks of the bumps makes it so much more comfortable. So, you know, it's not as tiring to ride all day on a bike like this. You're not going to wear yourself out simply trying to hang on to your pedals. And to be fair, when you're going down more advanced riding styles, the suspension really does help maintain control. So at high speeds. So again, one day, you know, you may feel like, you know, you're racing and you're losing time to these guys, and you could make better time if you had a better bike, and that's probably true. But if you're not racing, and if shaving a few seconds off of your mountain bike ride is you know, really what's important to you, then maybe you should consider racing, because that's what racing's all about. For the rest of us, you know, there's other ways to get pleasure, and it's not necessarily, you know, some speed readout on a speedometer somewhere, or some, you know, app that tells you how fast you're going. That's not what it's all about. Anyway, so speaking of apps and how fast you're going, I want to end up on a safety note, and just to put it in a personal terms, I remember when I was a kid growing up, nobody wore helmets at all. In fact, if you wore a helmet, you were the biggest. I won't say it, but I have to say it's come a complete 180 degrees. Maybe I'm showing my age, but nowadays everybody wears a helmet. And if I see someone not wearing a helmet, they're the one that looks like a freak. So wear your helmet, come on. They make really good ones. I advise getting a decent one that's comfortable, not too heavy. I'm going to show you, mine has a feature that I think is a good feature. Might be worth paying for. It's called MIPS. MIPS is just a feature that allows some movement between the main body of the helmet and this inner lining that sticks to your head. So you can see the yellow part that straps to your head can move a little bit, and that way when your helmet hits something, it allows the helmet to move a little bit and doesn't smush your head quite as much. There's a little bit of slip, so they say that's better. Main thing is that it's comfortable and that you wear it every time. So for that reason, you want it to be comfortable. Mine has holes to make air go through, and you can spend as much as you like on it, but it's a good investment. Other things that people like, I would recommend gloves. You don't have to, but you know, they're always better to have when you need them than not when you don't. So, and then eyewear, especially if you're on mountain trails, sometimes those branches hang down low and it can smack your eyes, so something to consider. Don't wear glass, obviously, but some safety eyewear. Obviously, you want to wear some good solid shoes. Now, people also wear special shoes that can clip into special pedals. I don't use those types of pedal systems, but well, if you do, if you go that way, the so-called clipless pedals, that's gonna answer your shoe question right there, because those would be the shoes that you would wear. The other thing is, before every ride, you always want to go through a bike check. And even if you don't know anything about fixing bikes, if you're going to ride, you should know a few things. So you at the very least want to make sure that your wheels are solid and that there's no movement. So give it a spin and make sure it's spinning freely. Same time, you want to make sure your brakes are good. You want to sort of roll your bike back and forth and make sure they're locking up. And also at the same time, oops, also at the same time, the pedal, the lever feels appropriately tensioned. So you don't want that lever to come all the way back to the bar and the bike's still rolling, right? You want to pull it back a little bit, start to feel it, and then when you squeeze down, it locks it all the way. So, and then the same thing with the front. Again, make sure the brake locks in both directions. Oh, see, look at that. There's a little bit of play in my front wheel. So this is not quite ready to ride. I don't know if you can see that front wheel moving. Yeah, anyway, if you can see this move it a little bit to the side when I push back and forth. And I can feel it. So that needs to get tightened on properly before it goes anywhere. Other things to check besides that is that, oh, I haven't put a chain on. I'll show you on the other bike. But you basically want to make sure that, you know, your wheel spins freely. And later on when you get it out into the street, you can test the gears and make sure you're getting through all your gears. The last thing you want to do is get halfway down the trail to the bottom and then find out that you can't switch all your gears that you need. So a quick safety check. Again, making sure your suspension is properly adjusted. Make sure your seat height is properly adjusted. That shouldn't change, but, and then again, check your air pressure on your tires. And, you know, I think that should wrap it up for today. But hopefully I've given you something that's, you know, some use that'll be of some use. And yeah, good luck on your next mountain bike purchase, and see you out on the trails.